Our next panel, How Vodcasting is Rewriting the Rules of TV. So please welcome the panel and Athena Witter from Engine Pop, who's going to be our moderator. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. You're all still awake after lunch, I hope so. Thank you, Justin, for the intro. And just look, a quick confession, right? And everyone else agrees on the panel. What the hell is vodcasting? Right? We don't wake up in 2025 and say, I'm off to make a vodcast today, do we? Like, it's just not a thing. So, if you really look at how we're discovering new content, we're discovering shows through creators, we're discovering it through social media and platforms, and our distribution has really, really changed across the industry. And, I'm joined today by some amazing people, and in fact, I'm going to call them courtesy of a new sponsor, which is the Vodfathers. So, from the Diary of a CEO, the Traitors Uncloaked and Dish, these are no longer side projects. These are becoming the main stage. And so today, it's not about semantics. It's not about anything to do with that. It's about strategy. It's about creativity. It's about business models. And look, let's hear from the brilliant minds. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks. Yeah. My name's Darby Dorras. I'm Chief Content Officer at Platform Media, and we're sort of next generation media company who do everything end to end. So we produce, grow, monetize, and market our own shows and those other people's as well. You mentioned Traitors Uncloaked, which is one of ours, but also shows like Ramesh Ranganathan's new podcast, Graham Norton's new podcast. So lots of kind of shows that are created and grown through YouTube as well.
Amazing, thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Jason Fisher. I'm the Exec Studio Director at Flight Story, with a home of the Diary of a CEO, but also a new slate of shows recently, which is We Need to Talk with Paul C. Brunson, Begin Again with Davina McCall. I personally really oversee our production and our creative approach to the show. And as Flight Story as a whole, we're really the home, I would say, of creator-first shows and IP. And that's the world we're kind of building as part of the shifts we're seeing in media today.
Hello everybody, my name's Ben Kerr. I'm the CEO of Cold Glass Productions. We are only 6 months old, we're a new indie, but we basically have two halves of our company. We work as a marketing services business for IP holders. So we do a lot of work with the BBC, and we're the digital content provider for the Brit Awards and Mercury Prize. Plus we create and own our own IP and digital franchises. And the most famous one of those is Dish.
Amazing, thank you very much. And my business is Engine Pop, and I'm the founder CEO, and I'm fascinated by this space. And I just want to start with the first question for you, Jason, actually. Flight Story and Studios has evolved beyond the Diary of a CEO into a creative media company. What does that shift look like? Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, it's quite a big shift for us, and it's not one we necessarily always saw coming, but really I would sum us up as creator first. And the shift that we've seen is we're showing up in spaces that usually we would see really dominated by traditional media. Over 50 million people watched the Diary of a CEO on YouTube last month. 30% of those were watching in a living room on a TV. And that's even a few years ago, not a space we would really have even had the right to be in. So showing up there, but as sort of a independent creator with the flexibility and control to distribute how we want to, show up to our audience very quickly in new ways, to evolve our formats. It's allowed us to think of ourselves less so much as a podcast, or God forbid a vodcast, but as a show and a brand that's like a traditional brand. Really, it allows us to build a world and an ecosystem around what we're doing. And we're constantly thinking about what's the next living room we're going to break into. I mean, just last month we had Diary of a CEO in cinemas showing globally, and that's not a space, again, we would typically be welcome or expected to even be seen in. So the shift is allowing us to consider ourselves, I guess, as more than a show, than a podcast, and it's really changing how we approach everything, really, from distribution all the way through to the IPs themselves.
And so you've moved from a show to a studio entity, end to end.
Exactly, yeah. We produce everything in-house, but also with the flexibility of having those independent creators on board.
Yeah. And can I just bring you into this, actually, Darby? The Traitors, everyone knows, big phenomenon happening at the moment. Can you please tell me a little bit more about what you do, and also how the transformation from being a companion content series to becoming what it is now?
Sure. I thought you were going to ask me who the winner is.
I mean, I would love to know that.
I'm not going to reveal it.
Perhaps I already know, but yeah.
So yeah. I mean, like I think we do a lot. We're a business that has lots of different sort of divisions and arms, really. But Traitors Uncloaked, I think, has been a sort of there's sort of, for me, there was like these kind of 3 acts of companion content in a way. And the first act was like the audio podcast companion thing. And there was loads of that, and some of them really broke through, but there were also, we got into a mode, I think, as an industry, which was like, right, everything needs a companion podcast, let's make them. And very quickly everyone went, no, we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And then they pulled back and there was lots fewer made. Traitors came along and was a really interesting case study, I think. There was a lot of chat at the start of that about like, what is this? Is this a TV show? Is it a visualized podcast? Is it a vodcast? Is it a show? And I think our approach was, we don't really care, in all honesty. We just want to build something that there is an audience need for. And the 2 things I would say that are most important about that were the team, in all honesty. Like, we have a team who are podcast and kind of YouTube natives who produce that content at its heart. And then obviously it lives in lots of different ways across different platforms, but that means that the approach to production is built into those people and their style, that you get a relaxed conversation, which is very much what we believe audiences want. And then I think the other piece of it is to build, when we designed that thing, it was about like, what is the audience need? And everyone talks about audiences, but it was like, what's the thing that people actually give a shit about and aren't getting from the Traitors? And at that point, they did the Traitor reveal moments that everyone would have seen on social didn't exist.
Yeah.
And it was the genuine thing that was being talked about after the first season that was like, oh, we'd love to see that happen. So working closely with Studio Lambert, who obviously produced the Hero show, we produced those moments and then grow those through social and embed them in the core Traitors Uncloaked. So it's about the right team. It's about like thinking about not doing the old-fashioned thing of producing some long form and then think about how you're going to grow it, market it, socialize it.
Yeah.
It's the complete.
I mean, that was our frustration. We were talking about that, weren't we?
Yeah.
It's like you really have to adapt properly, right?
100%. Yeah, you need to be thinking about everything from day one, and that's how. And we do that for Traitors and for the companions, other things that we make in that space. But we do it for like anything we're going to kind of build, whether it's a kind of commission or whether it's something we might fund ourselves. It's about what's the great, I'm the guy in our business who looks after the creative and the content, but arguably the most important bit is growth strategy. Like, how do you get this in front of the people that are going to care for it?
Then I want to bring in Darby on this because Ben, I would like to bring Ben on this. Could you describe a little bit more about your business and particularly around Dish? And we spoke earlier on about like identity and community and how all that works and fits into the model.
Yeah, I think the thing that we do is we sell companionship.
Yeah.
I think what audiences are looking for now more than ever is a group of mates. Yeah. And I think what radio always used to do really well was feel like it's your mates in your room talking to you. And I think where podcasting came and now the kind of stuff that we do, I think essentially what we're doing is we're building a gang of like-minded people that you want to make part of your life. And I think the great thing about where kind of creator-led content has come from is that you can control your frequency and you can control the platforms you're on.
Yeah.
And so actually our job is to identify an audience and be there at every step of their life within that passion. So Dish is all about food. So the thing that we do is we give our audience a long form show in audio format and in video format. We then give them a recipe. We give them a recipe video. We give them all the ingredients they can buy at Waitrose.
Yeah.
We give them a means to share the recipes that they have. And so effectively, if you're a food lover, we aim to be your companion at every stage of your food life, I suppose.
And for those that haven't watched it, who's in it?
So it's hosted by Nick Grimshaw
Yeah.
and Angela Hartnett.
Yeah.
And every week we have a celebrity guest on who talks about their life and loves of food. And every week Angela serves them a meal and we have a sort of a discussion over food.
Right.
And I think at the beginning of the show, when we first launched the show, we didn't call it a podcast or a vodcast or a video. Our aim was to just be the most hospitable show on the planet. And so in that sense, we want to be giving and generous at every stage. And that starts with when our guests come on, we give them food. All of the crew get food. The agents get food. We give the recipes away for free. We give how-tos away for free. And we want to be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what audiences are looking for now as the media landscape is changing so much, is stuff that brings people together. And I think that's what our aim is to do.
And I think, touching on that a little bit further with you around distribution. And so you've built that mechanic inside the business that it feels very, inclusive.
Yeah.
What does that mean in terms of your, distribution strategy?
I think I suppose it basically starts with the audience. I think a really good example of our distribution strategy is we've been partnering now for 3 or 4 months with Spotify, and we're putting the show as a Spotify video. But the interesting thing is we put a different video on YouTube of the show to Spotify.
Yeah.
Because we recognize that the audience on Spotify is one that wants to feel part of a community, and so they want more chat and more conversation with Nick and Angela. The YouTube audience is a global audience that needs a faster hit into the food. And so we create a different cut for that.
Right.
But essentially what we do is then we create 2 different forms of recipes. And then there's, of course, the sort of the click to buy on the Waitrose website. So we're basically looking at every part of that food journey, and when we're coming up with the shows, we're putting the production, so we're delivering all of those hits, and then our editors make it relevant for all of those parts as well.
And Darby, you mentioned earlier around the companion and the way it's sort of changed over time. When you're designing for a YouTube or a social first, just to build on what Ben was talking about, what advantages emerge in that space for you to be able to shape your content?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, it's obviously very different to doing a sort of traditional broadcast commission. I think that Ben's absolutely right, which is that, it's about having a different approach entirely led by which platform you're putting that content on. So you may be having one hero piece or whatever you want to call it, but let's call it a show, right?
Yeah.
But that may be disseminated in entirely different edits and creation depending on where you're putting it. I also think that, again, about the right team, it's so different to the way that we would traditionally build a sort of broadcast team, where so much is driven towards dropping a piece of content on a TX, on a schedule, and going, there we go, and let's see what those overnights do. And it's that's still an important part of the media landscape, but it's building a team who are dropping it and then responding to it. They're looking at the thumbnail, why isn't it performing? They're looking at the long form and going, how come we're down on our long form performance versus the last 2 episodes? What are we doing? How can we change, in real time, the content that we're distributing? So it's a totally different mindset, I think. And entirely led by a sort of a creation process at the beginning of thinking what is this and where's it going to live and where are the audience for it, and then okay, well, how do we get to them? And that may mean multiple edits and different kind of designs depending on where you think that is, and that can involve a traditional broadcast channel as well as social, but it just depends.
So we've talked about the originality, where it originated from, format, distribution, bringing in the audience, and all of those things that sort of marry in. If we really talk about from show to franchise to business, can I actually just pick something up that you said earlier around expansion and scale, Jason? And you was talking about, building the ecosystem around the talent. But beyond that and beyond the shows, what is next? What else are you doing in that space?
Yeah, there's two main focuses for us coming up. I mean, in the last year, we spent a lot of time, as you both said, figuring out how, when we distribute smartly to other platforms, are we doing that in a way that is relevant to that platform? You can't just put the same thing on YouTube as you can put elsewhere, because the audience and what they're looking for is completely different. We spend a lot of time on how do we show up in the real world. So we look at ourselves now and we say, okay, digitally, we think we're covered. We've got a lot of the platforms and we know how to perform on those platforms. But now it's about speaking tours for our hosts. It's about products that the audience really want. It's about those cinema screenings I mentioned, for example. But really for the next year, we're going down 2 areas that 6 months ago we might not have expected to. One is very technology driven. We really acknowledge that only about 20% of the world really even speak English. And the Diary of a CEO, if we could appeal to that other 80% of people, could reach a lot more people in general. So we've been rapidly kind of building tools that allow us to dub and translate that content very quickly and expand that ecosystem on one level. But also, when I sort of mention our freedom to adapt formats, we had an idea 4 months ago that on paper kind of sounded ridiculous. And it was, what if Stephen Bartlett was the next Miss Rachel and making kids TV content? And then when you stop laughing at it, you're like, well, actually, there's a subset of our audience who are approaching a point in their life where they're starting a family or they're settling down. And if we can continue to engage them in a way that they need, we can, again, continue to be a touch point in their lives. So we are actively now working on educational content that are 20-minute animated cut downs of the Diary of a CEO, with the guests characterized. It's completely different. And one of those ideas we'd probably laugh at ourselves 6 months ago if we saw ourselves doing. But actually we find so exciting because it's another example of those areas we can break into and we can learn, and we just get obsessed with learning about these new areas and how to succeed in them, really.
Right. And Darby, you know, from your perspective, obviously you don't just do Traitors, you do lots of other things in your business. But, you know, when you're working with a format like the Traitors, and you're sort of delivering weekly rituals and, loops to come back for the audience, how do you sustain that belonging for the audience as you're developing your format?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think the whole process of creating it does come back to thinking about how to be like fully sort of integrated into a universe, really, with companion content. And I think that it's about kind of figuring out like what the enjoyment an audience is getting out of a show, whether it's like, I mean, we make scripted companions as well. So we did the scripted companion from Rivals, which was the sort of first time Disney Plus has ever done a visualized podcast, or whatever we're calling it today, on their platform. And then we just did the Wednesday one for Netflix as well, which was shot out in the US. And so I think that the whole approach, I suppose, to companion in general is bespoke. It's like understanding the show that people are showing up for in the first place, and then trying to figure out what the thing is in that people want more of. And it's never the same. Which is where I think the danger of a sort of carbon copy approach to companion stuff can sort of trip you up. And so we've genuinely said no to loads of companion stuff since the Traitors, because I just think that, you know, everyone needs to believe in it and know that it can reach the audience in the right way and then be sort of grown in the right way. So that's where I go back to that thing of like, not everything needs a companion show.
And I'm bringing you back in, Beth, as your you're right there.
You're getting away a glass of wine now.
No, not everything needs a companion, but actually you're doing lots of work with brands and your brand partnership. Can you expand a little bit more in that sense, and where the real value sits because of that?
Yeah, I think going back to the panel that we had earlier, I think actually brands have a really interesting role to play, because obviously they are a part of people's lives. And I think in the sort of the new media economy, where you're not restricted by broadcast and schedules, where you can transmit and put content out whenever you want, there is a great opportunity for advertisers to be a meaningful part of content franchises. And I think, you know, the grapple that this world has got to sort of get round is the old TV world was dominated by putting out shows where you could monetize impacts around it. And of course, video formats, it's harder and harder to make video ads cut through at the beginning and the end. And as production values go up, as we saw earlier, you're not going to be able to monetize it in the same way through the CPM on YouTube or on Spotify.
Yeah.
So you have to find ways to naturally and authentically, to use another panel, bring the sort of brands and make them part of the content. Because no one wants a boring host read, and no one wants a terrible ad at the start of the content. They're sort of trying to avoid advertising. So you have to find ways of making brands a natural part of the stuff that you do.
That, just jumping on that, is exactly it. Like, and I couldn't agree more, Ben. And I think it's the two sides of it. It's getting brands to understand that and putting them in a safe place to do it. And then it's getting talent as well. Like, it's really interesting working with kind of big, more traditional talent who obviously have an understanding of the way to interact with brands. It's like, if you can bring those two things together in the way that Ben just described. We do, one of the podcasts we do is Ramesh Ranganathan's podcast. There's amazing 2 episodes a week, and the second episode is with Shanti, his mum, and I would highly recommend checking out what they do around Santander. It's just amazing, and it's like the ability of a brand like that to lean in and be like, yes, this is what we want, and you're going to get this very authentic but fun, genuine and funny content that as a consumer you're just lapping up, because you're just like, this is just amazing, but at the same time you're obviously starting to react and integrate that brand. So
I mean, we're hearing, and I want you to obviously pick up on some of that as well, but you know, content is content regardless of where it is, even if it's part of a brand relationship or a broadcast relationship or, you know, original IP, it is content, right? So is that something that you guys are looking at a little bit further in your world, Jason?
I mean, you've kind of quoted our commercial team, to be honest. When they come to our editorial team, they go, content it is genuinely content. I mean, I spent the first half of my career in marketing and trying to do that concept, but in what felt like a much more difficult way of make that content feel like it fits the creator, it fits the platform. That's the biggest question we're always asking ourselves when we approach a sponsorship. And again, the authentic word is so key. Like, is it actually authentic? Yes. But on a more human level, does it fit the world of what you're building and the story that you're telling. Because if it doesn't, it's very, very obvious. I mean, we're blessed for when we're on YouTube, we've got such incredible data of the exact moment where people click off, and if the ad is not integrated right, I mean, it's like jumping off a cliff, and then it comes back up again. When it's correct, it can go the other way around. So it's huge consideration for us.
I want to look ahead. Okay, so I want to ask this question to you, Darby. Will mainstream TV formats start launching with always on digital strands?
I mean, they already are, right? I think the smart thing now is for the industry to sort of really be trying to think like fully in the round about what it's trying to do, where you have legacy brands or legacy strands that are trying to move into the digital space. It is about kind of properly understanding, again, like what that audience need is, or if there even is one. And I think that's where often you see stuff fall down, because it is about kind of going, you know, it isn't as simple as taking like more traditional broadcast teams and producers who produce that style of content and folding them into another media, right? And we've seen that time and time again. Like whenever the next new thing comes along, I think that you have to be able to obviously adapt really fast, which is harder the bigger your organization. Of course, it's harder. We know that. But it is by finding the right people who understand how to adapt and understanding and just accepting sometimes that you may have what was a really hit piece of content in some realm here, but to get that to relate now, you have to react and you have to build teams that can kind of understand that platform you're trying to place it on without mentioning any names or brands. But you know, it is about kind of being bold enough. I think that is the thing I would say, like the Uncloaked thing is a good example of this, is like the boldness of certain people within the BBC around that to have backed us. And when we were the ones kind of saying, we need to do it this way in the early days, or this won't work, or that is not what the audience want, there were people who totally backed that and knocked down the walls or the red tape or whatever to enable it. And I think you need those enablers, whether that's you're a small organization, whether you're working in the kind of the bigger media organizations.
Before I move on to audience questions, Ben, I sort of feel like clearly you've done an amazing job in sort of the food space. What do you think is the next category to blow up next?
I think I'll flip it slightly. The next category is the over 35s. Because I think half of the Dish audience they're watching on YouTube or anywhere else are over 35.
Yeah.
And I think naturally, because there's kind of like a creative distraction of the media industry that's happening at the moment, and sort of the YouTube creators, there's a natural sort of Gen Z of finding new ways to create content. Actually, the older audiences are also watching loads of bloody YouTube. And so it's time for the sort of, for mainstream celebrities to flip and say, actually, how can they offer something with authority to their audience? And that's where a lot of the advertising money is too, because that's how old marketing directors are. And then actually spend where they feel comfortable. So for me, actually, as we build as a business, the next two formats we've got coming out are in sort of adjacent verticals to cooking, but actually it's thinking as much about the over 35 audience as it is any other. So that's where I think the interesting thing is. Most of the stuff we've seen today, it's been much younger, but the audiences are there.
It's expansive, absolutely, and lots more opportunity in that space. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then I'll revert back to some questions I might have. But apparently, the question still is: so who wins the Traitors?
Don't let him leave till his handshake.
Yeah. I've been pulled off stage for anyone is with you about that.
Don't worry, you don't have to answer it. And Jason, there is a question for you though. So Darby CEO, it's obviously traditional versus TV formats like, The Apprentice, Dragon's Den on YouTube. So the question I think they're asking is, will it ever go into a traditional format?
It's a really good question, and something we actually talk about all the time. I think there's a huge piece to be done in terms of when we think about the formats that we find really nostalgic, and some of the formats that were really successfully, still successful now, but even were maybe in their peak 10, 15 years ago, they almost deserve a revisit through this lens of creator-led media. And it's what so many creators on YouTube do so well, is their format adaptation, where they take something that is maybe giving us a hit of nostalgia and it's being presented in, this modern take. So we are actively talking about and piloting quite a few formats that follow that lens. Whether or not they show up on, traditional media in the same way that they show up on YouTube for us, kind of, it remains to be seen. Yeah. But it's a huge thing we're thinking about and something that really, really excites us.
And I want to ask to all of you, what's the biggest opportunity in the next 12 months in your spaces? Put you on the spot, Ben.
Isn't it to put a bet on Joe Marler winning Strays?
One more. Just one more.
I do. I suppose I go back to. I do think it is thinking within a franchise model. If I had money right now, I shouldn't say this because I'm giving away the secrets. I'd bet on dogs. Dogs. There's dog formats are the next big thing.
Well,
Saying-
dog formats, commission that. All commissioners in the.
I kind of want to go with dogs, to be honest. I think it's
Yes,
fantastic.
it's true.
It is.
One last one, really quickly. I think we're about a timeout. Okay. Any more? No.
No.
All good.
Just ask me one.
All right, I think that's dogs is the end of that. So, look, thank you very much to Jason, Darby and Ben. And if anything, Vodcasting isn't the right word. It's about redefinition and redefining it. And for anyone creating today, the biggest opportunity of all is just to get it done and look at your ecosystem. But thank you very much and enjoy the rest of TellyCast.